All right, guys, so for those of you who are just filing in, just like the other Q&As, we're gonna wait another minute or so, and then we'll kick things off, but just drop your questions into the Q&A. While we've been waiting, Jennifer has already been doing some of her career counseling to me in the back end, so she is ready to go. Her brain is on, yeah. She's in career advice mode, so feel free to drop your questions in. I know that this is a really popular session and people have a lot on their minds and that they're looking to transition and they don't necessarily want to. Jennifer, yeah. I don't know if you're sick of people asking you because I've been asking you so many questions about the same thing, but you're an expert, so I know people are going to appreciate
my job. I'm ready. Hopefully I can give some good guidance.
I was saying this and I just feel like you have such a calming voice, and whenever I talk to you, I'm like, yes, Jennifer, that is exactly what I need to do. And so I appreciate when I talk to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So let's see. Natalie is asking, what are your thoughts on doing a cold request to connect with someone on LinkedIn for a company that you're interested in?
I am all about using LinkedIn for connections. And if you have a way to send a message through LinkedIn to a cold contact, I never think there's anything wrong with that, as long as you're asking the right thing. If you don't know somebody, you can't really come out and say, hi, you don't know me, but I'm looking for a job. Can you help me? However, if you were to knock on somebody's door, let's say there is a position available, and you say, excuse me, I noticed that your company is hiring for X position. I did throw my hat in the ring. I wondered if you had 10 minutes to talk with me about what some of your needs are. Simple as that. People may respond better to that than I need a job. Okay, your resume is just going to go to HR. You're looking for somebody to be responsive. And if you go in with a question like that so that you can get insight and information, you might have a better chance of actually getting a response.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I know it's hard to reach out to anyone, even if you do know them, you haven't talked to them in a while. It's hard to approach that conversation, but I mean, I think especially right now too, people are so willing to help, and you know, they want to help people who are looking for jobs and things like that. So
absolutely. And I think that the hardest thing for people is that I'm afraid to bother somebody. You're not pestering somebody by reaching out and asking a question. And if you don't get a response within a few days or maybe a week, it doesn't hurt to reach out again. Not everybody is on LinkedIn. Remember that you're on LinkedIn because you're looking for work perhaps, but not everybody else is on LinkedIn. So give people a chance to respond. Plus right now, it's still the middle of the summer. By the end of next week, everybody's going to be back in their offices, wherever their offices are right now. So give it a chance. I have had candidates that have had success reaching out to somebody that they didn't know, getting a response back, direct them to the appropriate person. If it goes from a higher up to an HR person or a higher up to somebody who's doing the interviewing, more than likely they're going to conduct the interview.
Yeah, that's a really great point. So I want to kind of maybe dive into a little bit about what you've been working with me on, and you know, trying to navigate, you know, how long do I stay in this industry if I am not? How do I figure out, you know, what it is that I'm good at? And I know you talked about it a little in your presentation, but I think, you know, with me, you've given some really great advice into, you know, looking at my resume and looking at some of my skills and, you know, going from there. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Are you asking about how really to dissect what you have on your resume to try to identify those competencies? Tell me a little bit more about.
Yeah, so just how would someone go about figuring out what they're good at if they're looking to transfer into a new career and they don't know what? So you started with, well, why don't you take a look at your resume and see some of the skills that you have that would be transferable into a different type of career? So yeah.
So it's always easier to try to identify a transferable skill if you know what you want to transfer into. Mm-hmm. So if you say, okay, I'd really like to go into, I love this particular kind of widget and I want to go in and I can sell it and I can work it and I always sell my friends on it and I kind of want to make that happen, you at least know what you're going into. It's a little bit more challenging when you don't know what you want to go into. And that's when I think you need to take a step back and say, what am I really want to do when I grow up? You know, and sometimes it's easy to ask the question of yourself, you know, pretend like there's no parameters on your job search. There's no, money doesn't matter and the type of career doesn't matter. I don't care if you tell me, Jen, since I've been a young kid, I've always wanted to be a lion tamer. Okay, fine, let's go with that. So you want to be a lion tamer, which means you have an interest in animals, which means you have an interest in helping organizations. Okay, can we identify any companies or any organizations that have to do with animals, animal conservation, maybe nonprofit organizations that deal with, you know, saving the animals, and saying, okay, here are some companies I'm interested in. Let me take a look at some of the positions that they would typically hire for and see if there's anything where the things that I like to do, like, oh yeah, I know how to do that. I can fit it into that kind of a role. So sometimes you have to start from here and work your way up. I kind of like to go from what is it that you like overall? It could be a hobby. If you really like photography, okay, well, okay, you like photography. What do you like about photography? What could you see yourself doing? What about photography do you like? Okay, so let's go to some organizations out there that have something to do with pictures, visual, something creative, and build from there. You have to start with an idea. You can't just say, what skills do I have that are going to be good someplace? There has to be some kind of an endpoint to build on.
Yeah, that's very true. I need to work on that. So Tanya is asking, what do you suggest we do if we have everything a job listing is requiring except for one item that says it is a requirement? How do you get the HR person to think outside the box? Is this through a cover letter, or what are some of your ideas?
So I always tell my candidates, if you're 85% qualified, apply for the job. Remember that employers are putting out their wish list. They're looking for a purple unicorn that sits on a rainbow cloud. That's what they're looking for. That's the ideal. But the one thing that's a requirement, you have to think, is this explicitly specific for the job? Like, if I don't have X, I can't do the job. That's one thing. But if you look at X and say, well, I have something very similar, or I have something that's related, go ahead and apply for the position. This is where your network comes in very handy, because it would be great to have somebody say, hey, you need to speak with Danielle. She's fantastic. And again, a hiring manager is going to look, and if they get a recommendation or a referral, more than likely they're going to want to have a conversation, and the interview can then maybe move ahead and take place. But look at what the qualification is, look at what the requirement is, and determine, does it have an impact on what the job is? I'll give you an example. Education level. A lot of companies say you need to have a bachelor's degree to do this kind of a job. Now, I know that there are definitely industries and definitely careers where you need to have the education or you cannot do the position. I certainly wouldn't want a doctor working on me if they didn't have the degree. But do you need to have a 4-year degree, a piece of paper that says you got a degree in modern dance, let's say, to showcase that you can do this kind of a position? You know, employers put on some of those requirements because they need to weed the candidates out. There's too many. When everything went online years ago, the number of applicants per position increased tremendously. And so education and other certain requirements that they put on there are done in a way to weed people out so you don't have as many coming through. But if you feel strong and you're adamant that you can do a position, I want you to use your network. I want you to be creative about knocking on a door and seeing if you can have a conversation with somebody to really determine how important is this particular requirement, because you may be able to get around it.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And I think too, a lot of it, or at least some of it, comes from your own personal confidence. And sometimes we get discouraged. I certainly do, in seeing, you know, a few of the requirements on this job listing aren't something that I've done before. But I just made it to a final round, and unfortunately I didn't get the job. But I wasn't going to apply to the job because I was like, well, I don't have A and B, but I have all the rest. And I just took a shot, and I made it to the final round. And, you know, I'm glad that I did it. I'm glad I went through the interviewing process. And a lot of it is about confidence, I think, too.
I think so too. And guess what? Not everybody's going to get the job. There's one position open. If they start out with like 100 people applying for a position, they screen 15 people and bring 5 on board to actually go through the interview process. I mean, so many people got weeded out ahead of you. You know, you've gotten in, you've gotten the interview. You're not always going to get the job, but you know, from, like you said, from a confidence standpoint, it does wonders to be like, okay, like I know I can interview. I know I can have these conversations. If you're ever asked in an interview, if you have something and you don't have it, but you have something similar, don't start the answer with no, I don't, but, because as soon as you say no, you've lost them. You can say, my experience has been in Y. I understand you're looking for X. I understand that X and Y are very similar in these ways. Tell me how you use this particular program. So you're not starting with a no, if possible. The answer is no, the answer is no. But try as much as you can to show the relatable experience so that they can see, you know, what you have, and maybe it's an actual good match, whether or not they thought it before.
Yeah, that's true. So guys, I know we're coming close to the end of our time, and I know, Tanya, you have another question. I can reach out to Jennifer, or, you know, I'll make sure that your question gets answered, so you can have that too. But thanks, guys, and thank you so much, Jennifer, for joining us. We really appreciate it. And I will be talking to you very soon, I'm sure.
Thanks so much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.